Good evening, and welcome to the Sanctum Sanctorum. There are stories we hear and quickly forget, stories that seem too strange to be true. But every now and then, a story comes along that makes us stop and wonder. Was it a coincidence? Was it imagination? Or was there something more? Today we enter the world where the unexplained becomes possible, where legends collide with reality, where the truth may be stranger than fiction. You'll hear 5 stories, and you get to decide, was it the truth? Or were the writers just pulling your leg? Today we're going to blur the lines, and hopefully, just hopefully, you'll be able to decipher the truth. Good luck. Story 1. Room 1046. There's an old story that's been passed around by night clerks, hotel workers, and people who swear they heard it from someone who was there. Most dismiss it as another ghost story. By the time it's over, you may not be so sure. Imagine checking into a hotel where every hallway looks exactly the same. Thick carpets swallow your footsteps. The walls seem to absorb every sound. Somewhere, an elevator groans its way through another sleepless night. Now imagine one guest who never opens the curtains, not even once. The staff notices him almost immediately. He's polite. He's quiet. Too quiet. Every time someone knocks, they find him sitting alone in near darkness, lit only by a bedside lamp. The room smells untouched, almost frozen in time. When a maid finishes cleaning, he asks only one strange favor: leave the door unlocked. Hours later, another employee enters. The room is still dark. A note sits on the table. Dawn, I'll be back in 15 minutes. Wait. No one knows who Don is. No one ever finds him. As evening falls, guests begin hearing muffled voices through the walls. Some swear there were 2 men arguing. Others insist they hear 3. Then, silence. The next morning, the hotel switchboard notices something odd. The room's telephone has been off the hook for hours. A bellhop is sent upstairs. He knocks. Nothing. He slowly opens the door. The room is almost completely black. At first he sees nothing. Then his eyes adjust. A man lying on the floor, covered in blood, barely breathing. Police arrive expecting to question a murder victim. Instead, they're greeted by someone still alive. They ask him, who attacked him? And he quietly answers, no one. The detectives look at his injuries, broken ribs, stab wounds, blunt force trauma. They know he's lying, or protecting somebody. Take 2. Or protecting someone. Hours later, he dies. The mystery should have ended there. Instead, it only begun. The name he signed into the hotel with was fake. The address didn't exist. Every label had been removed from his clothing. No wallet, no identification. Almost as though someone had planned for him to disappear without ever existing. Then came the phone calls. An unknown man contacted the funeral home. He knew details the police had never released. He paid for the burial. Flowers arrived with a simple message: love forever. No name anyone could trace, no explanation, just another piece of a puzzle with missing edges. And years later, investigators finally discovered the victim's real identity. But even then, nothing made sense. No arrest, no confession, no motive, no explanation for the mysterious visitors, no dawn, no answers. Nearly a century has passed. The hotel is still standing. People still sleep there. Most have perfectly ordinary nights. But every so often, someone learns of the story of 1046 before checking in, and they find themselves wondering, what do you think? Is this a tale of a murder gone wrong? Or maybe an execution? Or maybe we're leaving you in the dark. Story 2. The House That Refused to Give Them Back. If I told you there was a house where 5 children vanished in a single night, and not a single body was ever found, you'd probably assume it was just another ghost story. Most people do. But before you decide what really happened, listen to the whole story. Because by the end, you're going to have one question that no one has been able to answer for nearly 80 years. It was Christmas Eve, the kind of night filled with laughter, wrapping paper, and children too excited to sleep. Inside Old Farmhouse, everyone eventually settled into bed. Outside, the world was silent. Then sometime after midnight, someone woke to the smell of smoke. Within minutes, flames were climbing the walls. Parents scrambled through the burning house, pulling children from their bedrooms as smoke swallowed every hallway. Then, they finally escaped. They counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 5 children stood beside them. 5 didn't. The missing children were trapped upstairs. Their father did the only thing any parent would do. He ran back toward the inferno. But the ladder that always rested against the side of the house had disappeared. He tried using his work truck to climb into the roof. Neither one would start. Hours earlier, both had worked perfectly. The family phone was dead. A neighbor ran to call for help. The fire department didn't arrive until sunrise. By then, the house was gone. Investigators searched the ashes, and their answer came quickly. The children died in the fire. Case closed, except there was one problem. No bodies, no bones, no teeth, nothing. Experts would later argue that even fire is far hotter than this usually leaves human remains behind. The family refused to believe that what they were being told. Then the strange reports began. Some claimed they seen a man removing a ladder from the property during the fire. Another witness believed the missing children were seen riding in the passing car before dawn. The waitress later insisted she had served breakfast to 5 frightened children traveling with 2 unfamiliar adults the very next morning. Coincidence? Maybe not. Or maybe so. Years turned into decades. Most families eventually stopped searching. This one never did. The parents placed a giant billboard beside the highway displaying photographs of the missing children. Every passing driver became another potential witness. Then came the photographs. More than 20 years after the fire, an envelope arrived without a return address. Inside was a picture of a young man. On the back was a cryptic handwritten message. The parents became convinced they were looking at one of their missing sons. A private investigator agreed to follow the lead. He disappeared from the investigation before reporting back, and just like that, another clue vanished. The questions never stopped. If the children died, where were their remains? If they survived, who took them and why? The mystery has survived generations because every answer seems to create another impossible question. Maybe you've already decided what happened. Maybe you think you'll solve it. If so, you'd be joining thousands of investigators who couldn't. Story number 3. The last broadcast from mile marker 27. If you drive long enough on the back roads, you'll eventually pass a place where your GPS loses signal. Most people don't think twice about it, but there are stretches of highways where truckers won't stop, not because they're haunted, because of what they hear. State Route 41 cuts through miles of pine forest with no houses, no gas stations, and no cell service. Just before mile marker 27, every radio station begins to hiss. Locals say it's interference, Others say there's something else trying to break through. One October evening, a county deputy received a radio call from a stranded motorist. The transmission was weak. "I've hit something." The dispatcher asked if anyone was injured. A long pause, then it took back up. The signal cut out. The deputy received mile marker 27 12 minutes later. The car was still there. Driver door open. Headlights on. Engine running. And no driver. The ground around the vehicle was covered in muddy footprints. Only one set. They circled the car again and again and again, as though someone had walked around it for hours, and then they stopped, not leading into the woods, not leading into the road, just stopped. Search teams combed the forest until sunrise. Nothing. No body, no blood, no clothing. The missing driver was never found. The sheriff blamed the disappearance on the exposure and disorientation. The case was never quite solved. Then another call came. 3 years later. Same road, same mile marker. A woman phoned 911 whispering. The operator asked for a description. "He isn't moving. Can you drive around him?" "No." "Why not?" "Because he's looking at me now." The line went dead. Troopers found her SUV abandoned, engine running, phone still connected to the dispatcher, no sign of the driver, no footprints except her own. After that, locals began avoiding the hallway after dark, not because they believed the stories, but because they couldn't explain them. Truckers claimed their CB radios would occasionally pick up a frightened voice repeating the same sentence, "I've hit something." Even though no one was transmitting, engineers blamed atmospheric conditions. Story number 4. The Man in Unit 318. Most people assume storage facilities are the safest places in the world. Locked doors, security cameras, gate codes, bright floodlights. Nothing gets in unless someone lets it. That's what the company told Daniel when he took the overnight job at the Ridgeview storage. Easy money, they said. Just check the locks, make your rounds. They didn't mention Unit 318. The first night was normal. Too normal. Daniel walked the rows with a flashlight and clipboard, checking the locks one by one. The only sound were distant traffics and the hum of power lines above the fence. At 1:12 a.m., the office phone rang. No caller ID. He answered. Nothing. Not static, not breathing, just silence. Then the line disconnected. He wrote it off as a glitch. Old system, rural signal issues. By 2:30 a.m., he'd already forgotten about it. Until he reached row C. And that's where he noticed Unit 318. The lock was missing. Not broken, not cut, just gone. And the door was slightly open. He radioed the manager. No response. He checked the cameras. The feed for row C was frozen. All other cameras worked fine. Only row C showed static. That should have been his first warning. Instead, he pulled the door open. Inside was empty. Completely empty. Concrete floor, bare walls, no markings, no debris. But something felt wrong. The air was colder inside than out. Like the unit had its own weather. He stepped back out and locked it with a replacement lock from his kit. At 3:03 a.m., the motion alarms triggered. Unit 318 again. This time the lock was intact. He stared at it for a full minute before touching it. Warm. Not physically hot, just warm enough to notice. And he opened it. Empty again. But this time there was something on the floor. A small pile of dust arranged in a circle. Perfect symmetry. Like something had been sitting there for a long time. watching. And then he heard it, a sound from behind him, a lock clicking shut slowly, deliberately. He spun around. The door he had just opened was closed again. From the inside, his flashlight flickered once, twice, then stabilized. He backed away slowly and called for backup. No signal, not even emergency calls. The entire property felt suddenly disconnected from everything outside the fence. At 3:27 a.m., all motion sensors activated at once. Every unit, every row, every direction. Daniel looked at the monitors. Every camera showing the same thing. All the storage doors were open. Every single one except row C. Row C was still frozen and static. Then the static changed. Just for a second, a frame appeared. A man standing in unit 318. Not moving, looking directly at the camera. Daniel ran outside. Row C was completely normal again. All doors closed except 318, slightly open, like it had been waiting. He didn't go back in. He drove straight to the gate. It wouldn't open. The keypad still worked. The code was correct, but the gate wouldn't move. Behind him, a loud metallic snap echoed from across the lot. Then another. Row by row, locks clicked open. He slowly turned every unit door open. All of them, except 318, now fully closed from inside. The next morning, the manager arrived to find Daniel's car still parked at the office. Engine off, door open, key inside. Security footage showed Daniel leaving at 3:41 a.m., walking toward row C. He never came back into view. The police searched the facility 3 times. No sign of forceful entry, no sign of struggle. Unit 318 was open again. It was still empty. No fingerprints, no DNA, no explanation. The case was closed as a disappearance, but the manager kept one page from Daniel's logbook. The last entry read, "If you hear a lock you didn't touch, don't check which one it was." Story number 5. The city that killed its own lawman. We walked into Phoenix City, Alabama in the early 1950s. Nothing about it would look unusual at first. Small southern town, neon lights on tire storefronts, bars open late. People laughing too loudly in places they probably shouldn't be. But if you stayed long enough, you'd start to notice something else. People didn't talk openly about what happened after dark. And more importantly, they didn't talk about who really ran the city. Phoenix City wasn't just a town. It was a machine. Gambling houses operated in plain sight. Illegal liquor flowed freely. Bookmarking parlors sat next to the barber shops. And behind it all was a network of corruption so deep the law enforcement itself was part of the system. Locals had a name for it. They called it the Open City, because nothing was hidden. Not vice, not violence, and not the control. For years people tried to fight it and they failed. Witnesses disappeared, case collapsed, complaints were ignored. And anyone who pushed too hard eventually learned to stop pushing. Then came one man who refused. His name was Albert Patterson. He was a lawyer, a veteran. And in 1954, he decided he was going to do something no one in Phoenix City had done in years. He ran for Attorney General of Alabama. But his campaign was not just political, it was personal. Because Patterson had seen what became of Phoenix City. And he said publicly that if he was elected, he would clean it up. And that promise changed everything. Within weeks of announcing his candidacy, threats began, subtle at first. A warning word from someone he used to know. A stranger watching too long from across the street. A phone call that said nothing except heavy breathing before hanging up. Then it escalated. Windows broken in the night, cars followed on empty roads. His family began sleeping in different rooms. not because they were afraid of strangers, but because they didn't know who the strangers were anymore. On the night of June 18th, 1954, Patterson worked late in his tax office. It was hot, the kind of Alabama heat that clings to the skin even after sunset. He locked up just before midnight, walked to his car, and he got inside. That's when the shooting started. Witnesses said the gunfire was fast, controlled, professional. 3 shots, maybe more, but silence. By the time anyone reached him, Albert Patterson had already gone. The city reacted in a way that made everything worse, because instead of fear, they were quiet. Too quiet. No arrest, no public outrage from officials, no urgency. Almost as if the system had already prepared for this moment. But the people outside the system were silent. The assassination triggered something that Phoenix City hadn't seen in years. Attention. State investigators arrived, then journalists, then military police. And what they uncovered just wasn't corruption. It was a full structure of organized crimes operating within the U.S. town government. Gambling bosses, sheriff deputies, city officials all tied together, all protecting each other, and all benefiting from keeping Phoenix City exactly the way it was. How do you feel about this story? Are we just rolling the dice and hoping that you would believe, or was something else going on? Welcome back. Story 1. Room 1046. Would you have noticed if the room next to yours stayed dark all day? Would you hear the argument through the walls? Would you knock? Or would you keep walking? Would you tell yourself that it's really none of your business? Because sometimes the scariest stories aren't the ones with monsters. They're the ones where every impossible detail is preserved in police files, waiting for someone to believe them. Now, are you wondering whether this was just another creepy legend? It wasn't. The death of a man named Ronald T. Owens inside room 1046 really happened in January of 1935. His true identity, Artemus Ogletree, wasn't discovered until years later, and the murder remains officially unsolved to this day. Did we get you? Or was you on your toes? Story 2. The missing 5 children in a house that would not let them go. Maybe you've already decided what happened, and maybe you think you've already solved it. If so, you'd be joining thousands of investigators who couldn't. Because here's the part I haven't told you, that this is not an urban legend. It isn't the plot of a horror novel. Everything you've just heard is based on the real disappearance of the Sauter children disappeared in Fayetteville. 5 children vanished on Christmas Eve. No remains were ever conclusively recovered. No one was ever charged. And nearly 80 years later, the fire may be over, but the mystery never ended. Story number 3. Today, if you ask longtime residents about mile marker 27, most will laugh. Some will tell you it's another internet story. A few will become strangely quiet. If your radio starts talking, don't answer. Because sometimes the scary stories aren't the ones with monsters. They're the ones that sound just believable enough to make you glance at an empty road because you're driving home alone. What do you think about this story? Is there something going on at mile marker 27? Not this time. This is a work of fiction inspired by American roadside legends and unsolved mystery stories. No such document case has ever existed, or location has ever existed. Did we get you? Story number 4. How did you feel about Unit 318 and all the chaos that was happening? Did we fool you? Because guess what? This didn't happen. This was a fictional story that was written for modern urban horror. What did you think about it? I hope you enjoyed it. Story number 5. How did you feel about that story, about the lawyer in Phoenix City, Alabama. Did we get you? Well, guess what? This isn't a legend. It's documented history. The assassination of Albert Patterson in 1954 and the federal crackdown that followed are real events tied to the transformation of Phoenix City, Alabama. And for a time, the most dangerous thing in that city was telling the truth. Well, there you go. 5 stories. Some true, some not. Some so close to the truth that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't true. But all these stories have documents that back them up. This is episode 2 of Blur the Lines. I hope you enjoyed.